All right, Mike, if you could, Michael Moore, you could take your seat. Thank you. Yeah, come on, we gotta. Yeah, we're late back from our break, so we gotta make up for it with a quick.
Gina, come up. We'll have Gina come
Sean
up
Mellon. Simon Black, sit down. Oh, kia ora, Gina. Welcome up to the table. All right. So we're on to item 8.3. If I could just get your attention back, that would be great. Item 8.3, Climate Change and Resilience Strategy, the standing up of the think tank to support this work in the strategic space. So I'll pass over to Chris initially, and then we'll move to Doug.
Thank you. Yes, so today's paper is focused on standing up the Climate Change and Resilience Community think tank. This follows on from a discussion that's was had with CES, our Climate and Environment Subcommittee. So we've been working with them on the core content of this. They have seen the drafted terms of reference and supported it, and it's coming to this table today for approval. I have a couple of points to note. One is that we have had a late piece of feedback from Ngā Hapu, who are on CES, just around how we are representing mana whenua in the terms of reference. So there's a proposal to change that, which Kim will briefly chat to us about. We're proposing that we will follow up with that change with the Chair of Strategy, Ops and Finance and the CES committee as an in principle sort of change that would occur if you are approving this today, so that we don't need to manage that in this meeting. The second thing I just wanted to touch on, because I've had a question about it, is the Climate Change and Resilience Community think tank, once stood up, will be supporting us to focus on the development of our Climate Change and Resilience strategy. So the think tank will be supporting us to develop the Climate Change and Resilience strategy that's always also in development, and we're beginning to talk about that strategy at our subcommittee, so the CES subcommittee next week. The work is progressing at pace. One of the other things that we will talk about is whether we have sufficient forums and input into the environmental strategy that is also being developed. That is not covered off today, and it will be something that we come back to you on, so I'm just wanting to close that loop. The last thing I want to point out is, following you agreeing to the terms of reference, we will be working with the Chair and Deputy Chair to go through an expression of interest process for people to say, hi, I'd really like to be part of this, and appointments will be made through an operational process that we have underway in the background. So I just wanted to assure you of that. We'll be going out and asking for people to give us an indication of their interest by the end of October, and by the end of September, and looking to make appointments in mid-October so that we can have our first meeting to be confirmed, but either around the 20th or 25th of October. So that's just to give you a little bit of additional information about where to next. More information will come around to you, but I just wanted to close that loop off as well. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's something that nicely.
Awesome. And the other thing that I just wanted to note that Chris and I had a brief, and Jocelyn Councillor Pravanov and I had a brief conversation about just during that short break, is paragraph 6 on page 83 of this report around council in a briefing resolving to set a district-wide emissions reduction target in line with national targets of net zero emissions by 2050. That in that briefing we signalled an intent to set a district-wide emissions reduction target, and exactly what that target is will be defined through our climate change and resilience strategy, obviously with some relevance to national targets, but also reflecting the ambition and aspiration that we have around this table to take climate change extremely seriously and treat it as the crisis that it is. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, also just to note, the reason we've put that in the background of this paper is, although you have discussed it in a briefing, we have not followed back up in a public forum to say that that is the intention. So that's why we popped it in. We will, as Sophie has mentioned, the chair's mentioned, come back and have further discussion and land exactly what that looks like through this work. So just want to make sure we've also clarified that point.
Councillor Coe.
Yeah, look, I must admit my memory fails me in terms of whether I raised this at the committee level, but I note that the appointments to this group are voluntary, and my understanding is there's a review underway in terms of remuneration across all panels and so on that council uses. You know, it just seems to me that we rely extensively on community input and a lot of, for a lot of council related projects and so on, and whether there should be at least, a sort of a token meeting fee or something to cover travel expenses or whatever for the people involved in this panel, and whether there should be some consistency with other panels that council has that obviously hasn't been considered, because otherwise it would have been noted in the report.
When we were talking about standing up the think tank, I think it was with deliberate intention we were standing up the think tank rather than a panel or working group subcommittee. So the idea of the think tank itself was to bring the best and brightest together to be able to inform and get involved in the strategy as it was developing. That think tank is proposed to essentially meet 4 times a year, and it was, in my mind, the conversation's been around the idea of convening and facilitating those people coming together rather than it being a formal committee in the structure that we have for council. So that was the discussion that had played out to date, which is why it is pitched this way in the terms of reference and the report.
Well, okay. Well, I guess, having been one of those people in the past who's contributed extensively to council think tanks or advisory groups or whatever, I do feel this is something we need to perhaps consider a bit more closely. If I'm not sure, if perhaps the Mayor could update us on whether there is a review happening to get some consistency across the various groups that we remunerate. Is that correct, or?
I think we'll pass to the Chief Executive.
Chief Executive? Yeah.
Look, I'm just going to come back to the current operating environment that we're in, thinking about the long-term plan and the planning that we're going to be doing. If there is a discussion to be had about remunerating these sorts of panels or think tanks, that is something that we'd have to consider and take away and bring back what the impact to the balance sheet would look like for us. We don't have anything other than what we do with our independents, our independent members on committees at the minute. So that would be how we would need to approach that.
Sorry, Lawrence, can you just turn your microphone off?
And maybe Shelley.
Oh, no, now we've got... oh, yeah, there we go.
Sorry, it's just that, I am aware that there is a lot of inconsistency, and was my understanding there was a review underway, and I think we just should have a standard approach across all the groups that we involve. And as we're not talking big dollars here, we're talking a small meeting fee to cover travel costs or a little bit of time or whatever, I can't see that would be a huge financial burden, but there does need to be some consistency across the board.
Do you want to respond, Darren? Yeah.
Actually, I can see Janice waving her hand, so I'm just
Oh,
going
sorry,
to throw
can't
to her.
see them. Thanks. Oh. We'll get there. Cool.
The short answer is that staff are aware of the inconsistency, have started doing some work in the background to look at that. We'll bring that to this table alongside some other thoughts around advisory groups that will form part of a pared back version of the advisory group review that we had mooted in a larger format earlier in the year. So I just acknowledge the inconsistency that you've highlighted, and there are some other inconsistencies as well that don't relate to remuneration but relate to other important things, and that's the piece that staff are keen to bring back and will do. At the moment we're tracking to be able to do that in December.
Awesome, thank you, that's really useful, Janice.
Yep.
Was that all of your questions, Councillor Coe?
Yep.
Great. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Just for me, a point of clarification, we've made a change to paragraph 6 in the wording in regards to resolving. So that wording is exactly in point 5 of the terms of reference under the background. So it also needs to be changed there. I assume that will be part of the changes before we approve those terms of reference?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think the Mayor's putting forward an additional recommendation which would give myself and Councillor Provanov the ability to make minor amendments to the terms of reference, so we can make that change there and then. And I think also in hopefully reflecting on the minutes, we could potentially include that as well. So thanks, Deputy Mayor Kirby. Councillor Spires.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, is there going to be a lifespan on this think tank? I know in 12 months the terms of reference and the group's going to be reviewed. Is it also going to be reviewed if the think tank's been effective and if it keeps going or not?
Yes. So the purpose of the review will be to determine, once we have stood up the strategy, which will be the initial focus, ongoing needs and or whether it's delivering the value that we need over time, and also aligned with any outcomes of the review that that Janice mentioned, that we can incorporate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, great question and nice and succinct. Councillor Warwick.
Oh no, I turned mine off, I think.
Oh. Alrighty, Councillor Provanov then.
Yeah, thank you. So through the chair, so just following up on Councillor Coe's question, I suppose my question relates to teasing this out a bit more in terms of remuneration for or payment for members of the public versus elected members who are on panels. And it's my understanding, is this correct, that if elected members are going to be paid for additional work that they do on some of these advisory panels, that we have a set amount of pool of money? So that means that if they're paid, that all councillors' pay is reduced.
Feel free to answer briefly now, Janice, but I think maybe this is a slightly separate conversation. But thanks for raising it, Councillor Provanov. Yeah.
It is a separate conversation in that there are some really specific requirements around councillor remuneration that means that councillors can't be paid additionally for jobs that they, or for representation at committees or groups that they are appointed to as a councillor. It's very clear in the guidance from the Remuneration Authority about that.
But they can if this council decides to pay them, they can be.
No, there was an amendment.
You did.
Yes.
Council has the ability to set remuneration levels for councillors at a rate above the base remuneration, that is the minimum that any councillor could have, and to set those remuneration levels based on the size of, I guess, the workload that different councillors, that different roles, that do different roles have. That's the approach that's taken here in this council, where actually every councillor is paid above the base in recognition of the time involved in being appointed back to community boards and other community committees, and then councillors with additional roles on top of that also receive further remuneration. So that is taken into account when the remuneration levels are set at the start of the trainium.
Did you have any other questions, Councillor Provanov, related to the terms of reference?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Halliday.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Just a few little points here. First of all, 12.3 on the terms of reference, which is page 89. Talking about membership, 12.3. Yeah, okay, at least 5, but no more than 7 communities, including mana whenua. I'm just wondering whether this is something that
Yes, this
that
was the amendment.
Chris has talked to about this, because I was wondering whether we should have that separated out.
Which is what's going to be the case.
Right, okay.
Yep, so it's all covered off. Yeah.
Rightio, that's great. In 12.1, it says at the end of the paragraph, who fulfills the role of signing off meeting minutes, the chair or deputy chair. What does that mean? Who fulfills the role of signing off meeting minutes? I just can't understand why that's in there. Is that significant or something?
No, I think it's for completeness. We're just saying that you will have that role. So what we're trying to do through the terms of reference for the think tank, which is something we're doing in this space for the first time, is to give some clarity for people about who's doing what, so that we're intending to get the members of the committee together to make sure we're clear on the role, scope and nature of what we're doing in the space. So that was just for clarity.
Look, I guess that means that instead of it coming back to the next meeting for signing off, the chair can sign it off. Is that right? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Just clicked then. Apologies for that.
No worries.
Number 16 talks to a quorum with one councillor in there. I just want to clarify, is there a stand-in for this councillor? I mean, in the committee, in the think tank itself, there's no requirement to have more than one councillor in there and that sort of stuff. So if that councillor is not available as such,
yeah, I think we could
can it be the deputy chair, or can it be any sort of
Yeah.
councillor? That's sort of broad enough for that.
Yeah, we can definitely add in an alternate.
That was fine. I just wanted to check on that just to make sure that there's maybe an alternate. Just didn't want to get caught short with if it needed to be
No, that's a
included
good
in the
point.
terms of reference.
Yeah.
There's just bear with me here. No, I found something incorrect. Number 17 on page 86 in the mana whenua section talks to terms of reference attached will be mentions that Section 8 of the terms of reference attached in Appendix 1 mentions that all CRT minutes and outputs will be circulated to Te Whakaminanga. Section 8 of the terms of reference actually doesn't do that at all. Maybe it should have been Section 19. Section 8 talks, it was agreed that it doesn't pick up that connection at all.
Good point.
Number 19, meeting minutes and summary material from discussion will be distributed within 3 weeks of the meeting, and that might have include the sentence including going to Te Whakaminanga or something along that sort of line.
Yeah,
That's
Jocelyn
cool.
and I, if we are given those rights to make minor editorial edits, we can add that or change that.
Sweet. A broader question. We're talking about climate change and resilience strategies, environment strategies. I'm wondering, and Chris, you could perhaps help me out with this one, with regards to sustainability or waste minimalisation, or educating the community about closed loop, all those sorts of scenarios. I notice it's sort of sprinkled through this, but to me, there needs to be a strategy driving that aspect of things. Is that going to come through the waste minimalisation strategy that's just being run through at the moment? Is that going to be the vehicle for pushing that side of things as such?
In short, yes. So what we're asking this think tank to do initially is to help us set the strategy. So that's the direction and what we're trying to achieve in the climate change and resilience space. So things that already exist, like our waste management action plans and other things, will connect up to it. So they'll be the mechanisms to drive change. It may be that some of the members of the think tank are already engaged in those initiatives already or plans already. We're not trying to overtake or or for want of better words, throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're trying to bring something that connects up together, essentially. So that will, when we're finished, there'll be a nice hierarchy of how this all fits together and what is driving change and the emphasis that we place on those different areas. So at the moment, the reference to mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and any of those words, that needs to be set through our strategy. So we've been clear about how much emphasis we're giving to it and how we will progress that. We don't have that for you now. That will be developed.
Oh, look, no, I get that. It was just more, I didn't want it to get lost.
Right.
What I wanted to just know was just, I get all that, that sort of stuff, but I just wanted to know how that's being addressed, because to me that is low-hanging fruit. We're sort of there now. We were out yesterday seeing the site and that sort of stuff with regards to the reclamation centre that's going to go in down at Hunga. Great stuff going on, a lot of stuff in train. What I was concerned about is actually what part of what we generally do, not necessarily this, is pushing that. And did we need to put some focus on that with regards to ensuring that does have something driving it as such?
It's the same with the transport space, and we've talked a bit about that before.
Okay, that's great. That's me. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And last set of questions, Community Board Member Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering, expressions of interest, how are we advertising that? Which channels? Because it's a very short space of time for us to actually get the advertising out there and get CVs and then the close-off point.
We are looking to work with this chair and the chair of SES to finalise that this week to go live next week. Essentially, we're going out through our usual channels. So there's online, there's papers, there's all mechanisms we can think of to get out and about. Actually, even through our engagement hub in Waikanae, we've had members of the public who have indicated interest, and we've said to them that we're going to touch base with them when we go live with the expression of interest. So there'll be multiple mechanisms for that to happen, and we actually have all of that kind of operational detail ready to go in the background. We're really just, after this meeting, waiting to be able to push the green light to go.
Great, thank you. Could we have an A3 for the Otaki Hub as well while we're going to consultation?
Absolutely.
And if you could send me an email link, so I've got we can post that on Facebook as well.
Awesome.
Lovely, thank you.
Great question, thank you. And I think it's kind of upon all of us to, once that does go live, the expressions of interest kind of form for people to fill out, that we share it to people who we think would be really awesome additions to that group. I've already had a few people who have expressed that they're really keen to have the opportunity to apply, so we've got to share it around. Councillor Halliday, any more?
My apologies, just one small quick thing I wanted to touch on. When we're talking about people that are going to be in these committees, I noticed there was a lean towards saying, look, we need climate change experts or this sort of scenario, which is great. But if we're talking resilience, I would think there'd be a place there for perhaps fire, rescue experts in those areas as well, to give them a different perspective, or to be looking at this in a different way. As such, I do recall going to a meeting with Mr. Jefferson quite a while ago, in regards to, we had all those different operators in the room, which was like really, really, really fascinating and interesting. But I think that I just wanted to make sure that that's sort of factored into this somehow as well.
We can take that down as a note. In terms of working through applicants and applications, we do have a set of criteria that we'll be utilising, so we'll make sure that we've got that balance in that criteria.
Yeah, it involves a bit of shoulder tapping or something, but much appreciated. Thank you.
Simon, really quickly.
Just quickly, also could we include expectations of time commitment as well?
That's in there.
That's in there.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Could we just maybe pop the recommendations up on the screen with the additional one? Thank you. Essentially, it's just A, B, and C as in the paper, and then the third one, around delegating to myself and Councillor Pravanov to amend and approve minor changes to the terms of reference. So that'll be based off of feedback from Ngā Hapu, and also what we've heard today around the emissions reduction target for our district-wide emissions being, our conversations around that being more accurately reflected within the terms of reference in the paper, and then also those points that Martin brought up around just the bits that don't quite match up. But other than that, Yeah, is there someone who would like to move? Oh,
Oh.
Councillor Ravana.
So I just also, just to ensure that in terms of the criteria, that we include information about, include resilience, people with expertise in resilience.
Yep, we can, that's something,
Yeah.
a minor change that we could look to.
I think
the
we'll be
tables.
working with you and the SONF chair on that criteria, so we can manage that offline.
Yeah.
That's not actually in the terms of reference.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Pravanov. Is there someone who would like to move? Councillor Pravanov, would you like to move these? Okay, thank you. Can we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Kirby, right of introduction. Just Councillor Pravanov? Oh, sorry, your microphone. Yeah.
Thank you, through the chair. So just very, very briefly, I think this is a real step forward and a really great way forward to develop such a strategy. And I really look forward to this journey and the outcomes. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pravanov, and that's a great indication of how much work I think has gone into where we've got to so far, and also, as Chris talked about, at pace. Like, this is all kind of eventuated and evolved quite quickly, as it needs to, because this is a very pressing challenge that we're facing in the climate space. So any other contributions to debate? Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair, point of clarity actually. I note in the options at number 15 on page 85, you've got options, option A and option B as such, and option A is recommended by council officers. Is that actually picked up in these recommendations?
So do you mean that the recommendations should say that council accepts option
Well, we're
A,
being
or-
asked to approve terms of reference, etc. But we've got an option here established. We've got an option here to establish the climate. Establish a climate change and resilience committee think tank to inform development of council. That we've got an option here to actually agree to that. But we've got a note here. We've got two notings on the recommendations and an endorse. Is that the endorse establishment CRT2 approved and proposed attached in Appendix 1? This isn't an Appendix 1. This is actually our agenda as such, our report as such. I'm just curious to know whether there needs to be something specific to note that. I just from a process perspective.
Yeah, Chris, go
I think I might say one thing. In the paper on page 87, under attachments, it says Appendix 1 CRCTT terms of reference, and there's a link to that. So that's what the reference to Appendix 1 referred to. And I guess that may be something to do with how our system incorporates the attachments. So I'll just clarify that. In Table 2, your reference to option A and option B. In the paper, we've outlined that there's two options. In the recommendations, we've picked up on the point that we're recommending you endorse this and approve the terms of reference. The reason that we've said endorse is because we were trying to pick up on the point that the CES, so our Climate and Environment Subcommittee, has put forward this and talked about this at length. And so they've agreed that they want to do this, and they're asking for this committee to endorse that point essentially. So at our end, we're trying to look at how we improve the link from the subcommittees to SOF so that you're not re-agreeing what they've already agreed. So we were proposing that you're endorsing establishing the CRCTT, so that's the think tank, and that you are improving the terms of reference subject to the additional item D and the recommendations that you're delegating the approval to make some minor changes to it.
Yep, no, I get that. I was just wondering whether it needed to be a bit more specific, but I appreciate that we're developing this process as well.
Yeah.
As long as officers are happy that we meet any required thresholds or anything like that, more than happy with that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Halliday. And Kim, over to you.
Kia ora, I just want to clarify the late feedback. So it was around exactly what Councillor Halliday said, around splitting out, and you'll see in 12.3, it says mana whenua and community members. So what that does is it actually relegates mana whenua to a stakeholder position instead of a partner position. So the suggestion was to split out and have another point that separately asks for mana whenua members, and then the other point that asks for community members, not to change the makeup or the numbers of the committee at all, but just to set those two out, and likely we'll have to change the wording in the quorum on page 90 to reflect that. And that's all that was.
And yeah, Councillor Pravanov and I can just clarify that wording with you before we sign off on the final terms of reference. Kia ora, thanks Kim. All right, no further contributions to debate. That's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you, Doug. Thank you for that work. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Gina. Cool. All right, so moving on to confirmation of minutes. On page 91, confirming the minutes of the 24th of August 2023 meeting, and that there are no public excluded minutes to confirm, so we've just got the set of minutes. Any issues? Anyone who wants to move them? Mayor Holborough, seconded Deputy Mayor Kirby. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. And now we move to item number 10, closing karakia. Would anyone like to do a closing karakia before I volunteer some? Go, Mayor Holborough. I can see you hovering.
I think this is all right for a closing karakia.
Yeah, love
Kia
it.
hora te marino, kia whakapapapau ngā mū te moana, he huarahi mā tātou e te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou e a tātou katoa, haumea hui tae ki.
All right, kia ora team. Thanks for a nice and efficient meeting. I think we finished 20 minutes ahead of time, so we now have a 30-minute break. Yeah, we did it.